And welcome back. In our first story, Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Sam George, says he has summoned electronic money issuers, EMIs, to respond to the growing cases of mobile money fraud in Ghana. Speaking on PM Express on Tuesday, he described the trend as deeply concerning and promised swift action. He adds that government will not sit idle while Ghanaians lose their money to digital criminals.
Of the critical keys for issuance of an EMI license is protection of the customer. And so if the allegations we are hearing are proving to be true, and again, it's a big if, because in one of the instances, I have seen one of the persons who complained that her money was taken without her giving her PIN to anybody, do a retraction now to say that she was asked to verify her PIN and she entered it. There's social engineering fraud going on at the moment. And so, but again, the mobile money, the EMIs, have a responsibility to intensify their public engagements and public sensitization engagements. They have a responsibility to the Ghanaian people to determine for us or educate the public on what the right steps are relative to protection of your wallet.
Well, you heard the minister there, Sam Joe. Now let's get some education on this from Yao Ansojiabo, cyber security consultant, and he's joining us via Zoom. We're grateful for your time, Mr. Jiabo.
I'm also grateful for having me.
Well, mobile money fraud is increasing by the day. I mean, from where you sit, how will you define it? What is mobile money fraud for those who do not know?
Well, I think that that's simply just manipulating the system to take money which does not belong to you. So in the case of MTN Momo, there are a lot of factors that come into play. But if I should take it from where Sam George ended, he said that there was an incident where the person never gave out the PIN. Then from the cybersecurity perspective, I might assume that the MTN Momo app, the application, may have been hacked. What does happen is that if you take your mobile phone, for example, you have the test app, you have the WhatsApp app, you have so many applications on the mobile phone. Now, when it is built, we call something zero-day vulnerability. That is when there is a vulnerability which has not been discovered by the developer, by the vendor, and the user. So in this case, MTN. Now, when that happens, a hacker may have discovered some vulnerability which is being exploited. But in the case of MTN, it could be a vulnerability which has been discovered by a hacker being exploited, or it could be an insider who gives out information as to funds that have been received by individuals. So with the case of MTN, I think that if they want to do further investigation, what will be appropriate for them is to do what we call ethical hacking or penetration testing. That is when that test is conducted, and that test will reveal any vulnerabilities that the system contains, based on which appropriate remedies can be sought.
Well, for the ordinary person, everyday person who continuously receives, calls from people, you have to give me your PIN. I work for MTN or any other, any of the telcos, and seeks to get that person or weasel their way into that person's accounts and withdraw their monies. How do you identify what's happening, and how do you protect yourself?
Well, if you're talking about how to protect yourself, there are so many different strategies one has to put in place. But I think that the reason MTN may not be too much worried is that, apart from the incident that Honorable Sam George mentioned, where the person never gave the PIN out, in most cases, one has to give the PIN out. So the knowledge of funds availability in itself does not automatically translate into withdrawal on the side of the hacker. So this means that the user has a role to play by giving the PIN out. Now, when it comes to securing your system, for example, if on the side of the user, the mobile phone or whatever app is being used to receive or to transfer money is not protected, there can also be a problem. For example, I've had situations where people have called individuals and say, okay, give me a particular PIN. MTN has a PIN which users use to access funds that have been transferred to them. Then also on Google, if somebody calls you and says that, okay, there is a PIN coming to your phone, so give me that PIN. Once the person takes the PIN from you, he has control over your phone. He will listen to your conversations and he will be able to listen to whatever transactions that come to you. That is one side. And recently, from cybersecurity perspective, what we've been seeing, we have a lot of incidents of phishing. That is why perhaps email, it comes in voice, it comes in text, purportedly coming from a recognizable institution. So, for example, you can be receiving email or text from Joy FM, or purportedly coming from Joy FM, but it's not coming from Joy FM. It has Joy FM logo, it has a few details from Joy FM, but it is not coming from Joy FM. And there will be links to click. The links do have malware. And when, for example, you have something like keylogger malware, the keylogger malware, what it does is that everything you type on your mobile phone or your computer, the hacker sees it because malware has been planted on your system. So he sees it. He can listen to your conversations. He can have access to your PIN, MTN PIN, or your banking details. So obviously you need to protect your own system. There are so many ways that your system can be protected. I think that we don't have enough time to go into
At least you can mention one or two that people can easily access, to protect themselves, because it gets, serious by the day.
So if somebody calls and asks that, okay, there is a PIN that is coming to your phone, so give it to me. On Google, you can do that. So if I have your number right now and I go to Google, there are some details, instructions that one has to follow. You follow those instructions, I can take over the control of your phone. So you don't need to give that PIN out. Another thing is, even with the MTN Momo app, one requires PIN to access funds available on whether mobile phone or on the application. You don't need to give that one up. Then also, the common thing that I just mentioned, the phishing. The phishing is where you receive, say, any of these banks, not coming from them, but purportedly coming from them, said, okay, do A, B, C, D, and there are links to click. Once you click, the links have malware that can be planted on your mobile phone. And we have a lot of malware, and one dangerous of them is what I mentioned, the keylogger malware. That whatever you do on your phone, you are typing your name, you are typing your banking details, the keylogger malware enables them to see. Another thing is that usually we even go on the internet and we talk about cookies. When you want to access a particular website, sometimes cookies pop out to say, okay, accept the cookie, don't accept the cookie. That in some cases can also be dangerous. We have persistent cookie, we have the sessional cookie. The persistent cookie, when you click on it, whatever details that is put on the website, because it's persistent, it can be there for months, it can be there for years. Sessional cookies disappear once you are done with the transaction you want to do on the internet. But how would you know that this is persistent cookie? The website on which you want to access information, you must ensure that it is a credible website.
Okay.
That you want to access the information. When it's a credible website, then it is okay. But those less dishonorable or less honorable websites like the pornographic sites and others, you don't expect to have good cookies there.
So
we have
Yeah, so on that score, you know, the communications minister is introducing another registration of SIM cards. This time around, we're not going face to face, but do you think this in any way can resolve some of these issues? At least he's confident it can.
Well, I don't think so. Registration of SIM card, if the MTN mobile app or the Momo app still has some vulnerabilities, even if you do re-registration of SIM cards, they will yield nothing. I think that MTN has obligation to get, if they don't have, I don't know for sure, but if they don't have, they should get access to cyber security expert. Forensic audit will be done to ensure where all these problems are coming from. Then subsequently, the penetration testing or ethical hacking can also be done to discover any vulnerabilities that are enclosed in that application used for the Momo transfer. Then, when all these are done, then MTN issue will be put aside. Then you go to the individual subscribers. If the problems are also coming from there, then we can also start educating the public as to how you can secure your system. Until these are done, I think that re-registration will not amount to anything much.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Ansu Jiabo. He's a cyber security expert talking to us on this issue about mobile money fraud. Well, moving on, from the government and the International Monetary Fund have reached a staff-level agreement on a package of economic policies and reforms to conclude the fourth review of the 36-month Economic Credit Facility supported program. Speaking at the event, IMF Chief to Ghana, Stefan Rede, backed the recent hike of utility tariffs in Ghana. He described the move as necessary and a measure to strengthen the fiscal position of the various state-owned enterprises, especially the Electricity Company of Ghana.
This agreement, as usual, is subject to the approval of our executive board. And once the executive board completes the review, Ghana will have access to about $370 million, bringing the total IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement since May 2023 to some $2.4 billion. Now, before we hear from the Honorable Minister and Governor Asiama, and prior to addressing your questions, I'd like to briefly outline some of the key points of our assessment and also our discussions with the authorities during this mission. So first, the external position has continued to improve with rapid accumulation of international reserves by the Bank of Ghana. And indeed, the accumulation of reserves has clearly outperformed the program objectives. Economic growth in 2024 was also stronger than expected. However, overall performance with respect to the program's targets and objectives deteriorated significantly at end 2024, reflecting policy slippages in the run-up to the general elections. Both the government's primary balance and inflation missed the targets. Several structural reforms have also been delayed, and some of the milestones in this area were missed. Fortunately, since then, the authorities have adopted bold corrective measures in several areas to ensure observance of the program objectives for 2025 and beyond. In particular, the authorities have adopted a raft of corrective policy and structural measures to address the budgetary implications and root causes of the 2024 fiscal slippages.
What rather started like the most difficult review of the program has ended successfully, with the IMF and the government of Ghana reaching a staff-level agreement on the fourth review today. This marks a significant journey in our collective effort towards resetting the economy for the Ghana we all want. We remain fully committed to the implementation of the program and will do all it takes to ensure that the objectives of the program are on track.
Well, former Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam is challenging government's economic data submitted to the IMF for the fourth review of the extended credit facility. Dr. Amin says the staff-level agreement reached between government and the IMF vindicates the economic performance of the Akufo-Addo government.
In presenting the budget, the Minister for Finance boldly declared that Ghana had breached the program. If you breach the program, it simply means that the program has collapsed. But for government to reach a staff-level agreement with the IMF shows that the program is on track. Don't forget that this review, the fourth review, is based on end December 2024 economic performance. And so this government, the new government, has no contribution at all in terms of the benchmarks that have been used to arrive at the staff-level agreement. Even if you look at the preliminary fiscal data the IMF brought out, it is not the same as what the government reported in the budget. The government reported a primary fiscal deficit of 3.9%. The IMF, using the same data, has come out with a primary fiscal deficit of 3.25%. The difference is about 0.7% of GDP. So that alone tells us that the government data was not correct. Because how could two institutions using the same data come out with two different figures in terms of the primary fiscal deficit?
Well, let's bring in now Joy Business Editor George Rafi to break this down for us. George, so help us to understand or appreciate it. When IMF and Ghana reaches a staff-level agreement, what does that mean?
So let's just backtrack a little bit. In May 2023, we signed up to an IMF program. Now, we're supposed to, at the end of the program, get about $3 billion to help us or help the economy, because it was then established that we were having issues with our balance of payment support. So before you get this money, at every point in time, you're supposed to have met some targets or benchmarks. Now, don't forget that this fund program is trying to deal with an issue of revenue in terms of being able to mobilize the right revenue, also deal with our debt situation. So at every period in time, there are certain benchmarks that we are supposed to meet. If you're able to meet those benchmarks, they will disperse X amount of money to you. One, to support certain projects identified in the budget, and also to build your balance of payment needs or build your balance of payments account and all the rest. So we've done first review, we passed it. Then second review, we passed it. We've done a third review, we passed it. Then came to the fourth review. And what was the fourth review looking at? There were some quantitative issues and also some structural issues as well, starting from July to December 2024. And if you had met those things, then the fund would say that, okay, we came this month, all right, but we were looking at some fiscal issues that happened from the middle of last year to December 2024. And if you indeed have passed those benchmarks when it comes to arrears, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to Bank of Ghana's international reserves, when it comes to maybe your budgets, and you've passed all those benchmarks, the staff, they do come in, do the assessment, and say that, okay, based on X, Y, Z, loosely saying that at the staff level, you have passed that fourth review, right? Which can technically be described as a staff-level agreement. So it is more of them reaching agreement with government that you have been able to meet those targets that were set in the IMF program. When it comes to the fourth review, have you been able to contain your expenditure? Have you been able to meet the inflation target for that period? Have you been able to meet the international reserves for that period, that by the end of December, when it comes to your dollar reserves, so international reserves at the Bank of Ghana, it should hit a certain amount. And based on those boxes, then the agreement has been reached that you've done well, they will take, and I know you're going to come into what's next, so let me hold on here.
So yes, and now coming to that, and in your submission, you just made a statement about whether we've reached certain structural, agreements, certain things we're supposed to follow before the review is done, and then the money comes to us. And in this fourth review, there have been, disagreements between the former finance minister and the current one. Have we reached all the structural things we're supposed to do?
And if we were able to put the statement on the screen, maybe I'd like to still read some things with our viewers, because traditionally, a review backtracks and looks at something that has happened over the past months.
Right.
So let me just shift to what the argument the minority is making, that it will be difficult to pass a review if you have not made some progress the preceding months. So the minority's argument is that the argument from the current administration that they have messed up, the data was not right, there are some questions here to be clarified. Because if they had done that bad, how could we have passed this fourth review at the staff level? But again, if you go through the statement, it raises some serious concern. And for the second paragraph, and if they've been able to put that on the screen for us, I'll be so grateful. It says that notwithstanding the higher than expected growth, further significant improvement in Ghana's external position for last year, the program performance deteriorated, marked by the end of 2024. Fiscal slippages, we spent more than, in the run-up to the elections, led to a large than accumulated payables. Inflation exceeded program targets, and several reforms were delayed. Now, that is in the second paragraph. Now, let's go to the third paragraph. It says that since the beginning of the year, the new authorities have taken bold measures to address policy reforms and slippages and ensure achievement of program objectives. This include enacting strong budget and public financial management reforms, tightening monetary policy, and adjusting electricity tariffs. Certain questions need to be clarified here. That, yeah, there are problems, all right, but again, is 3 months enough to quickly meet all these targets?
All those targets, yes.
Yes, you can say that you have seen some indicators that gives you some confidence that things are going to work. But these are just objectives or indicators compared to a period where you have supposed to have missed certain things for us to make an assessment on. So if you listen to the minority, they might have a case that it begs to some understanding that what is the basis of them reaching an agreement if everything was bad in the previous months and all that. But the IMF itself is also saying here that at the end of 2024, these were the challenges.
So what
and so, but don't forget that, again, if you go through the statement, when it comes to the primary balance and the fiscal data, it appears the current data that the IMF has put out doesn't sync with what the finance minister announced previously in the budget. So that's where the managers are coming from, that it appears that there was more of a strategy or a plan to try and paint them black. And if these preliminary numbers have shown that it was not the same thing the minister presented, then there are some question marks here. But the IMF is also doing something. They've pushed government to do an audit of the arrears, which the Auditor General is undertaking. And that should take us about 6 weeks for it to be completed.
Well, George, stay with me. We have economist Dr. Patrick Isuming on the line with us to, take us further into this. Doc, we're grateful for your time on our desk. Prof, I beg your pardon. We're grateful for, joining us this morning. And I assume that you've come into contact with this IMF statement and the staff level agreement that we've reached. First of all, what's your opinion on this?
Good morning and good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
In the main, I think it was as expected. By the time the year ends, we knew that we've made some of the program targets, some of the quantitative targets, as well as some of the structural benchmarks. But if you look at how the new administration started, we always got the sense that the IMF was going to take a very positive view of how they started, especially with the fiscal side. And for a staff level agreement, it was very, very likely. So in the main, I'm not surprised that we got the staff level agreement. On the issue about who is to take credit or what has happened, I think it's clear that during the budget meeting, the statement about the primary balance, the primary fiscal outlook for the budget, the finance minister put out a deficit number which is higher than what is now being presented. My understanding is that when these numbers are presented, the first presentations are always to be done. They are subject to review. So I think there shouldn't be too much controversy about that. It's clear that the number that the finance minister presented is 3.9 was higher than what the IMF, or at least what has been confirmed with the IMF, about 3.25. So that's it. But I think we should always understand that these numbers are always coming just within 1 quarter of the previous year. It's always subject to my understanding that it's just a revision that
Well, Prof, so with the IMF statement that came out in the second paragraph, which states that notwithstanding higher than expected growth and a further significant improvement in Ghana's external position last year, program performance deteriorated markedly at end 2024. Fiscal slippages in the run-up to the elections led to a large accumulation of payables. Inflation exceeded program targets and several reforms were delayed. When the IMF says this, what does it mean for our performance and also the money that we are supposed to receive?
It's an acknowledgement that the program has performed well in some areas, but in 2024, in some areas, we didn't meet some of the targets. When a staff level agreement has been reached, it doesn't complicate that the program is in any form of property. Because the staff level agreement is presented to the IMF board, and when it's approved, the fund will be dispersed. But it tells us that we retrogress in some of the indicators, and we need to double up our effort to bring corrective action. That's essentially what it is. But this is no surprise. I think the contention really is about the extent of the rebate. Because it was clear that the growth target was higher than what had been projected before. And it was clear that we have set the inflation target. It was clear that some of the fiscal reforms have not been done yet. As we couldn't meet the tax, for instance, part of the new financial sector, public financial management act. We know that we have it in the time of and then even the fiscal here. So it was clear that some of the structural reforms have not been done. So for me, it doesn't look about much, but of course, given the political environment, this discussion about who thinks the same or
But Prof, just before I let you off, what are the long-term implications of the large accumulation of unpaid bills? How is this going to impact our coffers?
Well, usually it depends on how we try to deal with it. We have noticed that the current government, the finance minister, is trying to claw back all these slippages within one fiscal year. And that's why the budget that was read substantial fiscal consolidation and cuts in government expenditure. And also, we realize that that's going to have an impact on the growth. So we realize that 2025, the growth rate we are projecting is lower than what we achieved in 2024. That's because we are going to make up for lockdown on the fiscal side, the debt agreement. So that's what we have to deal with.
All right.
Every time we spend the election year mentioning ourselves, we are going to have to do more well-taxing in the subsequent year.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Patrick Esumini is economist at the University of Ghana Business School, and George is still with me in the studio. So, George, what's next for Ghana? Are we still going to get this money?
So, what is next for Ghana is that at the staff level, there has been disagreement. Now, there are still some corrective measures that we need to undertake when it comes to our financial situation, when it comes to what is going to be done for some state enterprises in terms of improving their financial situation. There are some issues we need to do in the energy sector. These are structural. And when it comes to the monetary space as well, government has to take a decision on some state banks in terms of recapitalizing them.
Right.
Now, they are also waiting for this audit by the Auditor General. That should be done in 6 weeks' time. Before June or in 3 months' time, they should have that report ready, showing that government has worked on those corrective measures. Then they'll go to the board of the IMF in June, possibly. If the board is then convinced that we have taken those corrective measures, both qualitative and quantitative actions, as well as the structural reforms, and the board will then approve that $370 million.
So it's not automatic that
it's not automatic, but often
a
a lot of work goes into the staff assessment that hardly has the staff gone to the board that they are refused their assessment on a country because of what they do before they go to the board. Right. So they'll go to the board in June, the board will approve that money, it will be disbursed to Bank of Ghana's account. We understand that that money will go to support some projects in the 2025 budget, and also some will go to build our international reserves. If you go through the statement again, it has said that at the end of May, per the program, the dates, our reserves should hit a certain level. As said, now we understand that we've actually hit that mark. So it's interesting in how that would impact on business confidence and also even the stability of the Ghana city.
Thank you so much, George, for joining us on desk on this IMF staff level agreement. We're grateful for your time. Well, away from that, we head to the Supreme Court, and today we'll hear the injunction application against processes initiated by President John Dramani Mahama to potentially remove Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo from office. Member of Parliament for Tafo, Vincent Ekowasefua, sued the Attorney General over what he described as constitutional breaches committed by the President when he referred 3 separate petitions asking for the removal of the CJ from office to the Council of State without notifying the Chief Justice. Well, let's take you to the courts now and speak to our legal affairs correspondent Lateef Idris on this. Lateef, what can you report from the court?
Well, Mami, so as we speak, before this particular injunction application to be heard here at the Supreme Court, there were 2 other cases. As we speak, those 2 cases have been called. Judgment has been given on one. There has been adjourned for the judgment to be given on the other one. So the expectation was that the application was going to be called and the hearing will begin. But we understand the panel, as we speak, is not complete. So the judges are currently waiting for one last justice of the Supreme Court to arrive to make that particular panel complete before they are able to sit. Just before that, we saw the current Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, and the former Attorney General, Godfrey Yeboah-Dame, being called into chambers by the justices of the Supreme Court. And the speculation is that they were called to be informed about this particular development, that one of the justices of the Supreme Court who sits on this particular panel to hear this injunction application by the Member of Parliament for Otapo is currently not available here at the Supreme Court. We are told that if in the next hour or so, if it doesn't show up, what it means is that the case will be adjourned for future hearing. But we are waiting to see what particular decision will be taken by this particular panel on this issue.
Well, Lateef, do we know who make up this panel, the judges, and how many are they?
Well, Mami, so in all, we have 5 justices of the Supreme Court sitting on this particular panel, and let me run you quickly through them. We have His Lordship Justice Ernest Yao Jehu. We also have His Lordship Justice Richard Ajay Frimpong. We have Her Ladyship Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu. We also have His Lordship Justice Samuel Kwame Adibi Asiedu. And finally, we have His Lordship Justice Yao Dako Asari. These 5 justices of the Supreme Court make up this panel. And as we understand, I wouldn't want to put out the name of this justice because he's the only one who is not available. And we understand he might make it or he might not. If he doesn't show up, like I mentioned, the case will definitely be adjourned for future hearing.
Thank you so much, Lateef. We'll definitely keep an eye on that one. Well, let's do climate focus next. And as Ghana braces for another rainy season, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, is shifting focus from relief to readiness, with flood-prone areas like Kwabre East and Asokore Mampong municipalities under watch. NADMO says prevention pays and is training emergency responders, health workers, and local leaders to act before disaster strikes. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin reports.
Every year,
Floods destroy lives and property across Ghana, but this year, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, says it is taking no chances. As the rains begin, the message is clear: prevention pays.
During when the storm is on and people are running for their lives, you want to bring health service personnel.
Charlotte Norman is the Director for Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Risk Reduction at NADMO.
I think it's important that we do simulation exercise, because without simulations, it's going to be very difficult to identify the gaps in the system. In terms of collaboration, in terms of coordination, simulations bring these out. Sometimes if you're not doing a simulation and the real issue happens, you would think that you know what to do, but then everybody is there, the stakeholders are all there, and you don't know who to take what action.
Flood-prone areas like Kwabri East and Asakore Mampong municipalities have been identified as high-risk zones in Greater Kumasi. In 2024 alone, Kwabri East recorded 17 disaster cases.
Last year, for instance, we have about 17 disaster cases comprising of fire disasters, commercial disasters, and then collapsing of buildings and what have you. And we have about number of children who are also displaced, and then some houses which are also displaced.
But this year, NADMO is turning response into readiness. For Charlotte Norman and her team, it is not just about reacting when disaster strikes, but about making sure every actor knows their role before the first drop of rain.
I see that in all your delivery, you spoke about what you want to do, etc., etc., but you didn't give specific time. Remember, we have only 48 hours for the disaster to possibly strike. And so you have to set timelines. The communication that you are giving, how long is that going to be? You know, how long is it going to take you to meet somebody, MC or NADMO, whatever it is? Just give timelines so that you know that, because it can happen that the whole day, you look, this person is not in this one, before you finish that, 24 hours is gone.
The training brings together all critical agencies, NADMO, National Fire Service, Police, Health, and local authorities, preparing them to respond quickly and save lives. With the rainy season already underway, the time, the organization says, to act is now, because in the face of disaster, prevention really does pay. A report by Mohamed Nuruddin.
Climate Focus is brought to you by Joy News in partnership with Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging gaps for positive youth development, and the Climate Development Knowledge Network.
You're still watching NewsDesk with me, Mami Sinyamiche Thompson. We'll take a break. We'll return with business.
It's now time for business here on NewsDesk. My name is Winston Taki, and now to our first business story. The Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, John Ewa, is advocating enhanced collaboration among stakeholders to strengthen financial literacy. He shared this during his address at the third edition of the National Financial Awareness and Financial Literacy Conference 2025 in Accra.
As part of activities to celebrate Financial Literacy Month, the Center for Financial Literacy Education, CFLE, brought together industry players, stakeholders, and students to delve into the finance sector and heighten financial knowledge. Speaking at the event, Advisory Board Member of CFLE and Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, John Ewa, called on regulators and stakeholders to collaborate more in deepening financial literacy among individuals.
A lot more that we can do, and we are hoping that the CFLE, they've already sent a proposal to the Central Bank. We are hoping that there will be a lot more collaboration, working together, so we can deepen the reach. The good thing is CFLE, that is all they do. The Center for Financial Literacy Education, that is all they do. So all they need is the ammunition to be able to do more. As banks, this conference that we are attending today is fully funded by the Ghana Association of Banks, who funds the Ghana Association of Banks is the banks. So the banks are doing a lot, but we need a lot more participants within the space. We need the DEMIs, the electronic money issuers, the telcos, we need the insurance companies. We need everybody to come on board so that we all deepen financial literacy.
Executive Director of CFLE Africa, Peter Asarinyako, revealed that financial literacy is key in curbing social vices.
If we are all financially rich or financially literate, one, social vices will reduce, because people will go after people for their monies, for their properties, just because they don't have it. If you live in a community and you are the only rich person, you become a target. And so I believe once we educate everyone, we share the essential principles, if everyone can, it's not about having huge amount of money. It's about being able to manage the little you have and living within it and being comfortable with it, being content with it. And that is what we are preaching. Yes. Even if you are making 1,000 cedis a month, how would you be able to live within that 1,000 cedis and take care of your financial needs? And that is what we are putting across. And so we believe if everyone can have that knowledge and then get and keep their financial house in order, social vices will reduce.
The event underscored the critical role of education in shaping financially responsible citizens for a more secure economic future. Helen Nakai Aye for Joy Business.
Away from that, the Federation Association of Ghanaian Exporters and the Ghana Export Promotion Authorities aiming to increase non-traditional export revenue to over $5 billion in the next 2 years. According to the chairman of the association, Davis Koboy, more investment in logistics and payment system is needed to meet these targets. He was speaking at the launch of the 2025 Ghana Horticultural Expo.
The Ghana Horticulture Expo, launched by the Federation Association of Ghanaian Exporters and GEPA, will focus on enhancing the competitiveness of the horticulture sector globally. In 2023, the agriculture sector contributed $495 million to total revenue from non-traditional exports. This, stakeholders in the horticulture sector believe, could increase significantly with the right investments. Davis Kobo is the president of the Federation Association of Ghanaian Exporters.
Rather than viewing these challenges as insurmountable obstacles, we see them as opportunities to redirect our energies towards markets where Ghanaian products have competitive advantages. Chief among these is the Africa continental market. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area represents the single greatest opportunity for expanding Ghana's horticulture exports. Within a market of 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion, Africa offers boundless opportunities for Ghanaian producers. However, we must move beyond celebratory rhetoric to practical implementation. FED calls for accelerated progress on eliminating non-tariff barriers, harmonizing standards, and simplifying custom procedures. We need investment in logistics infrastructure and payment systems that facilitates intra-African trade.
Chief Executive of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, Francis Kojo Kwatin, pledged their commitment to support businesses to increase their exports globally.
To become competitive on the international market, Ghana's horticultural industry needs to innovate and add value to the range of products that we offer to the market. We are proud that our pineapples, mangoes, vegetables, and indeed the full range of produce are premium and are loved by our buyers and consumers in the market. However, that may not be enough to sustain us in the market for the long, since our competitors are also deploying strategies to outcompete us. It is my expectation, therefore, that the entire horticultural industry players will use this year's Expo to rally around the team and discuss ways in which we can sustain this important sector into the future.
This year's Ghana Horticulture Expo is themed Innovate, Transform, Sustain, driving growth in Ghana's horticultural sector.
That's all for business here on NewsDesk. My name is Winston Haki. Back to Mamiesi for the rest of the bulletin. Mamiesi.
Well, Winston, what's interesting is the financial literacy, and most of us don't really have that. It'll be interesting to know what to do or where to invest my money, you know.
Very necessary.
Many people don't pay attention.
That's very true.
But anyway, so you're still watching NewsDesk. We'll take a break and we'll be right back.